Welcome to this Java Break with Basis. Today we'll talk about mixing and matching Pro5 and BBj, how we can serve up the power of Pro5 and BBj a la carte. So let's look at our agenda. We'll start off by talking about what our choices are. We'll talk about the interoperability, the ability to mix and match Pro5 and BBj, and Visual Pro5 and BBj. We'll talk about how you can take your steps from Pro5 to BBj, what those steps consist of, and we'll give you a sneak peek of something new that's coming up in BBj and Pro5 10, how we can live in both worlds. We'll show you a demonstration of some of this new functionality, and then we'll finish off with some questions and answers. Firstly, let's talk about what your choices are. Well, you can run in the Pro5 and Visual Pro5 world. You have character-based Pro5 on the AIX, the HP, UX, Unix, Linux, those kinds of platforms. Or you can run CUI and GUI in the Visual Pro5 world, and that of course would be a Windows-only based environment. But with BBj, the superset of Pro5 and Visual Pro5, your world is expanded. You can still run CUI and GUI, but you can run on all of the operating systems listed above, plus the Mac. And of course, you can mix and match BBj and Pro5 family. You can share the data bidirectionally. You can decide whether BBj has the ownership of the data or Pro5 has the ownership of the data. And you can share the code. Unidirectional, BBj running Pro5 tokens. Let's have a look at what this typical deployment for a character-based user interface Pro5 world looks like. Server-based, green screen type application, either connecting via dumb terminals or terminal emulation on PCs. You can migrate this to BBj and have exactly the same deployment environment. Dumb terminals and terminal emulation on the Windows PCs. You can also decide to introduce some GUI with BBj, and so those PCs could be running terminal emulation in the green screen mode, or they could be running BBj's thin client deployment, either character or GUI. So there's no need for terminal emulation if you utilize Basis's thin client deployment. Now let's come back to the Pro5 environment. How do we make a migration, and how do we mix and match the technologies? Well, starting out with this environment, we can add BBj. Utilizing the Pro5 data server, we can have BBj connecting via terminal emulation again, or via the thin client. So the thin client can be deployed via a fat client, or Citrix terminal server deployment, or Basis's own thin client deployment. You can use load balance servers to serve up the GUI interface. So for example, we have a client on the East Coast that runs, I think, just over 1,000 users. Of those, some 300 to 400 are running BBj's thin client on a Windows terminal services environment, and the balance are running green screen type Pro5 applications where the data resides on the Pro5 database. You can also introduce the BBj database and have shared file access, so thereby allowing the lock-in to take place at the operating system level. Now we can take that a step further and decide to switch up the database to the Basis database management system, thereby taking advantage of functions like triggers, store procedures, or the extended file types such as the X-keyed and V-keyed file types, while still retaining Pro5 client access to that same data. Maybe your world is a visual one, a GUI environment, and you're running Visual Pro5. So you may have Pro5 data server to handle your file sharing, and out at the workstation level, you have either fat client or using third-party product like Citrix or terminal server to serve up the face of the application on the desktop. Of course, that is a Windows-only environment. You could introduce BBj and add BBj to that desktop deployment. You could be running Pro5, Visual Pro5, and BBj clients. So you could run a part of your application in BBj and a part of your application in Visual Pro5. You could again take that next step to introduce the Basis database management system under BBj and have shared file access, have the operating system manage the locking mechanisms between Pro5 data server and BBj. Or you could have BBj route through the Pro5 data server. And finally, again, you can make the transition, have Visual Pro5 and BBj hook into the Basis database management system. In this environment, you'd have your Visual Pro5 clients connecting via the Pro5 data server under BBj. So it's the BBj Pro5 data server. And of course, the ultimate would be to run pure BBj, either character or GUI, dumb terminal, terminal emulation, or thin client. So let's talk about the steps required to move from Pro5 to BBj. Your first step, your first consideration is your data. And of course, there's no conversion necessary if you're not going to take advantage of the new file types. Those files can simply be placed under the control of BBj services, and there's no actual physical conversion required of your mkeyed files. Your programs, on the other hand, have a few simple steps to take advantage of BBj's additional functionality. Firstly, run the underscore keyword utility. There are additional keywords in the BBj language. As the superset of Pro5, we've added new verbs, new function. So if you run the underscore keyword, which is a Pro5 utility, it'll identify for you where you might have used those keywords in your Pro5 code and offer up an alternative to do a search and replace. You can also select your replacement alternatives. So if, for example, if you've used the keyword end, you can replace that with underscore end. The next recommended step is to run the BBj CPL. That's the BBj compiler. The BBj compiler will highlight errors that perhaps the Pro5 compiler didn't pick up. These would indeed still be errors in your code, but would have escaped the attention of the Pro5 compiler environment. So you can run the BBj compiler directly on Pro5 token programs. You can specify whether you want just error output or whether you want it to generate the Pro5 or rather the BBj tokens. That's your choice. In the GUI environment, you want to convert your .brc, your binary resource files, to .arc, to ASCII resource files. And of course, we'd encourage you to read the documentation in two specific areas. One that talks about converting to BBj from earlier versions of Basis products, and secondly, looking at the language changes. So look under BBj specific documentation for the language changes. Therein, you'll see a host of improvements and enhancements. Of course, the major enhancement in BBj is the ability to not only run on your choice of operating system on the client side for GUI as well as CUI, but you have additional deployment choices. And then finally, you have the ability to run object-oriented code within BBj, including Java objects. And of course, you need to do your testing. Test your application and compare the output results between the two. Now I wanted to talk a bit more about the Basis database management system. What does it consist of? What are the components thereof? And why should you consider moving into a hybrid environment and utilizing the Basis database management system? Well, firstly, there's no conversion necessary for the basic types, the mkeyed files, but you could take advantage of newer file types like the xkeyed. Xkeyed removes any of the restrictions of mkeyed files. In other words, there are no limits to the number of key segments or the number of keys that you may have in a file. You also have the jkeyed file type, the vkeyed for variable length. Jkeyed has your commit and rollback transaction recovery capabilities. And we have our exclusive SQL file type, which is a fully relational database management system file type. In addition to the data, we have the Basis data dictionary. That's required for any SQL access to the data. That's managed from within the Basis IDE or the Enterprise Manager, or directly from your structured query language code. The third component of the Basis database management system is the Basis SQL engine, utilized by the interpreter, the ODBC, and the JDBC drivers. Basis SQL grammar generally conforms to popular SQL standards. For a detailed list of BBj's support of these specifications, have a look at the documentation online. So your Basis database management system consists of those three components, the data dictionary, plus the SQL engine, plus the data. And with the ESQL data, that equates to a relational database management system. Now let's talk about accessing that data. We looked briefly at some of the diagrams illustrating the access choices that you have, but let's enumerate them a bit further. So our language access to data is either directly from Pro5, Visual Pro5 and BBj in the form of our direct access read record, write record, and that's supported for your basis, legacy, and newer types, obviously excluding the exclusive SQL, ESQL file type, as the name suggests, only available for SQL access. We have SQL syntax access from both Visual Pro5 and BBj, and that's true for any basis legacy and newer file types, as well as any third-party relational database management system data that you wish to have access to from your application. You can choose to have your data reside in the Pro5 world, and you deliver BBj access via the Pro5 data server or via shared file lock-in at the operating system level. Your other choice would be to have the basis database management system control the data. That would be BBj services, and you deliver Pro5 access via the BBj Pro5 data server. And of course, you can decide to store your data in a third-party environment, third-party database management system or relational database management system, and provide access via SQL through their JDBC or ODBC drivers. Now let's talk some more about interoperability, mixing and matching. So I mentioned earlier we could share the data, have it bidirectional, Pro5 data server where Pro5 controls the data, the basis database management system where BBj controls the data, or have shared file access where the operating system controls the data. We could also share the code. I mentioned earlier unidirectional. BBj will run Pro5 tokens. So once you run the Pro5 program through the underscore keyword and you run it through the BBj compiler, you can then retain that code in a Pro5 token format, and BBj would automatically convert it upon loading it up into the interpreter. But very new and excitingly, I'm giving you a preview today of this new functionality, is we're giving you the ability to share the code, have it run bidirectionally, have a new verb in the Pro5 language called xcall, external call, and that allows us to run BBj code from within Pro5 or Visual Pro5. So we could be running both at the server or the client level, client side, we could run BBj code. Let's have a look at what that looks like. So here we have, on the xcall verb, we have Pro5 and BBj running at the server, and the Pro5 terminal emulation session, or terminal session, could be running Pro5 Rev10 code, and embedded within that code would be an xcall to a BBj program. And the example I'm going to go into in our little demonstration shortly would be to show you how we can consume a web service, because as you probably know from our previous TechCons and the demonstration code that we make available with your download, it's very simple, very easy to be able to consume a web service from within BBj. And now that same capability is made available to your Pro5 or Visual Pro5 clients. So let's have a look at a demonstration. Right, let's have a look at xcall in action. I'm going to mimic the running of a Pro5 type session. Of course, I'm using Windows here, so I'm using Visual Pro5. But let's have a look at a character-based user interface. As I said, mimicking a Pro5 session. And I'm going to use the CUI package tracking demonstration that we showed at a TechCon several years ago. That demonstration was written in BBj, and we've backported that code to Visual Pro5. But of course, as we know, Visual Pro5 or Pro5 can't directly consume a web service. So what we're going to do is take advantage of xcall to call a BBj program, which will be able to very easily consume the web service. So let's have a look. First thing we're going to do is use F3 to select the sample data, and then we'll press F1 to do the tracking. So there are the results. What we've done from Visual Pro5 or Pro5, the server level, we've done a call, an xcall in this case. It's a new verb in Visual Pro5 and Pro5 Rev10 that'll allow us to execute a BBj program. And that BBj program will do all the heavy lifting, the consumption of the web service, which is really simple and very easy to do within BBj. For our next example, we're going to do something a little bit more exotic. We're going to run on the client side, and what we're going to do is we're going to consume a Jasper report. So we're running a Visual Pro 5 program again, as we see in the top left corner from this icon, and we're going to run the add-on invoice report. This is what we ship with our demonstration programs with BBj, and so that invokes the add-on manufacturing company Jasper report. We can do our drill downs, and we see the sales for the month, the invoices for the month for Everest Industries. And again, if we want to look at a particular invoice, let's say we want to select invoice 5015, we can drill down into that. Right, so all of that functionality you're familiar with, as you see from the top left corner, this is a BBj program, but this has all been invoked from within our Visual Pro 5 code. So much like you would call any other Visual Pro 5 program, you're now able to call a BBj program. In this next example, we're going to consume some more exotic BBj controls. So let's have a look at the PDF generation demonstration program. This one has again been backported to run as a Visual Pro 5 program. We're going to select some chili con carne sampler and another item over here. We're going to generate a rebate form. Now when we click on the generate button, this is going to pass the information that we've selected and the quantities across to a BBj program. And we'll give this the name of rebate. That saves it away, and BBj calls up a multimedia viewer to view the resulting PDF file that we've generated. So just that easily, we can consume a BBj program from within Visual Pro 5 on our desktop. In this last demonstration, we're going to show off a new function that we have in BBj. So let's invoke a Visual Pro 5 program, and what we're going to do is we're going to pass it the string via xcall to BBj to the print preview, and we're going to show off some new functionality in print preview in BBj. So if we click on print preview, we'll see the preview being brought up within BBj, and here's the text that we've brought across. And you will see that we have a new function under Save As. We can save this as a PDF file. So let's type it in as vpro5 PDF. Click on Save. And down in my taskbar, I have Windows Explorer preset to my Documents directory where I've saved that PDF document. And if we double click on it, it'll open it up in Adobe. And there it is. There's my output from my Visual Pro 5 program. It's been directed via BBj to print to the print preview, and I've utilized the new feature and function within BBj to output this directly to a PDF file. Let's get back to the presentation. So in the GUI environment, we've seen how Visual Pro 5 and BBj can coexist. From your Visual Pro 5 terminal session, we can execute BBj code and have that be presented on your desktop in a window environment to deliver the output from your BBj application. So let's summarize what we've covered today. We've spoken about the choices that you have. We've spoken a bit more about the basis database management system. We've covered the interoperability between the two products. We've spoken about the BBj language extensions to Pro 5 and BBj and Java. We've spoken about the steps from Pro 5 to BBj, and we've given you a sneak peek of how you can live in both worlds by leveraging the new verb coming out in Pro 5 and Visual Pro 5 Rev 10 later this year. And you can consume BBj code from your Pro 5 application. So join us for our next Java break, painless report writing, on February 24th, 2 weeks' time, same place. And as a bonus, in between this Java break session and the next, we'll be running an hour-long webinar that will show you a case study of bridging CUI and GUI. That we are running next Wednesday on February the 17th. We are running 3 sessions during the day, a 9 a.m., a 1 p.m., and a 5 p.m. We hope you'll be able to find the time to attend that 1-hour session and see a case study of an application running in both CUI and GUI in the BBj environment, taking advantage of Barista's functionality, as well as leveraging some specialized capabilities of BBj and of Pro 5. So let's pick up on your questions and see if we can give you the answers to that.